almost 15 feet of water.
So like up to the window line
Yes.
up here?
Mhm.
There was water
Yes.
where we're standing?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So we're well above.
So wait, our van is parked here.
Your van
so
was underwater.
like a minivan length up to here.
Yeah, matter of fact, my neighbor had a van the same exact size in his yard, and he floated over it, over this.
The van floated.
No, not the van, he
Oh,
did. He floated over his van, because he got stuck outside, over this awning, over it, and into my yard.
So you would literally have to be standing on my shoulders right now.
Exactly.
And we would
and maybe
just
a
be
little
like
bit
this.
more.
I would be on my toes and you would be with your fingers and we'd be just above
And that's
the
what
water.
he was doing, trying to gasp for air to get into my home, because he only lived on the first floor here, 65-year-old Vietnam vet.
Pam Harris may have saved her neighbor's life at the peak of Hurricane Sandy's power, but that did little to prevent her from nearly drowning in a sea of red tape from insurance claims and government aid applications long after the waters receded, leaving nearly $200,000 worth of damage in their wake.
This 3.5-foot window breaks completely. It's gone. It's in here now. The water's coming, and I grab the pump and just stick it here. And I go, well, where am I going to put the water? So we open the door. When we open the door, I look up the block and see the water coming
this way.
This way.
So this is when we explain that you are in a very unique position right now. Back here, you've got the ocean. Across the street, we've got the bay. So you're getting it from all sides now.
Exactly.
There's no way to put the water when the water's coming from the front and the back.
So in a matter of, I'm going to say 7 minutes, this whole place is totally underwater.
You had insurance, number one.
Insurance and flood insurance.
Furthermore, which puts you ahead of fully 80% of the people in the game, because again, you got water here, you got water there, you did every right thing. So the insurance company made you whole.
No. The insurance company made me crazy. So when the assessors come in, they're they're happy and they go lucky and they're ready to do their assessment. And as he's doing it, he's asking, oh, what's, you can see what was damaged. You see the water is down, the ceiling's down, this is down. But when we get the paperwork back, the amounts of what they wanted to charge for, let's say the wood floor, it was compatible to what they would charge in Ohio as opposed to what they would charge in New York. Our cost of living is totally different. They wanted to give us $500 to replace the steps. It cost me $500 just to hire the guy to come out and give me an estimate. I paid well over $200 and something thousand
worth of insurance.
And got 80? Did I get 80? Or did we get 60? So I had to go into my 401k, I'm retired, and use my 401. I should be in Florida sitting on the beach, but I can't because my 401k is gone.
Insurance maxed out, 401k depleted, and only Coney Island Beach in view, Pam and her family were looking for a silver lining.
In designing NYC Build It Back, we learned from the experience that other cities had after other disasters. Our goal is to make our assistance packages simple and understandable and gear them to fulfilling unmet needs. In other words, to providing the assistance that will help you return to a safe, sustainable home after taking into account the resources you may already received from FEMA, private insurance claims, or other services.
I was happy as a pig in slop. Absolutely. I ran up and down like the Pied Piper telling my neighbors, Build It Back is coming, Build It Back is coming. Then I get the horror stories. I get there and they want to make copies of my copies. Really?
That was the first?
That was the first. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
But I sat there and I grinned and bared it. Like, it's okay, it's okay. If you need to make copies of the copies, it's fine, but I did make this for you. Then come to find out, a couple of weeks later, they lost all my paperwork. I had to start all over again. So now we're in December of 2013. And I'm still going back and forth with Build It Back.
How many caseworkers did you go through?
If I can remember, and I think I'm going to be a little generous, but I think it was maybe 5. Might have been, I think it was more, but I'm going to say 5. That they had duplicates here, duplicates there, this wasn't there, this was in this place, this shouldn't have been over here, this was in this file. So now things are finally starting to come to fruition now.
Right.
At least I thought.
That promise of progress came in the form of an on-site assessment from a Build It Back contractor and a brand new furnace.
But what they failed to replace is the piping.
Okay.
Like thousands of others waiting to be made whole again, Pam Harris and her family have invested money into repairing their homes and hope into the Build It Back program, an investment that's yet to pay off.
How much money are you guys out of right now after the hurricane?
$80,000 worth of not back, because we got back about 80, so I spent over 100 and something thousand. So I'm going to say about $80,000. I'm still behind, and I want my money back. I just wanna breathe. It's just the simplest thing. That's all I want to do is just breathe again.
In June of 2013, 8 months after the deadliest, most destructive storm to hit New York City in decades, Mayor Bloomberg announced the Build It Back initiative. The program's aim was to help fill the gaps for renters and homeowners where insurance and savings fell off.
It was well-funded, well-received, and, a bit of a mess. 2 years later, the program is the focus of New York City Comptroller Scott Stringer's latest audit, and the Comptroller joins us now to share his findings. Welcome back to BK Live.
Good to be back.
Thanks for joining us today.
And happy birthday before we start.
We were just saying, I think I was here on my birthday last year. I got to get it. So next year we're
so
booking.
Much. You're spending your birthday with
BRIC house. What
I'm
can I
writing
say?
this down.
That's right.
We're back 1 year. So back to the audit now.
Yes.
This is a less than happy thing for a lot of people like Ms. Harris and her family. What prompted this audit?
So before we did the audit, we also did something a little different in the Comptroller's office. I actually held hearings in all the impacted areas of Sandy, in Brooklyn and Staten Island, and in a whole group of communities. And I started to hear stories from people like this, like the package showed. Right. They lost my paperwork. I need more paperwork. Take a picture of this. And I couldn't understand when I would go home at night, how could this happen in every community? How can this be part of this discussion? And what we found after doing this audit, that basically when the storm hit, the consultants took over.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what happened. So basically you would fill out an application with one consultant. You would be incomplete. They never questioned that. And then they would give you to the other consultant. Right. Meanwhile, they're making $250 an application, whether it's completed or not.
Right. Yeah.
And that is where they ran up millions of dollars in money for the firms. Right. And nobody got help. And that was the crux of the audit. So the biggest lesson here is to make sure that we do not turn over crisis management to unqualified consultants and these private firms without fully understanding what they can and cannot do.
Right. So now that you've completed the audit, how much money are we really talking about, and where did it all go?
Well, a lot of the money went into the pockets of the people who have these consulting firms. What I've said in the audit is I think the de Blasio administration has made great headway. They're certainly taking a lot of our recommendations, and they had recommendations of their own, which I think are very helpful. But at the end of the day, they still haven't registered the contracts with these firms, so we don't have a bill of particulars about how to monitor them. So there's still more to do. And look, at the end of the day, we can say we're making progress, but nobody should go to the party. There's a lot of people, like you showed today, that are not built back. Many people will never be built back. We've lost thousands of people in this crazy system. And the reason I did the audit is because, one, we have to make the people whole, but we also have to recognize that we can't construct this kind of process. Again, Build It Back became a nightmare for most of the people impacted in Sandy.
So we saw the video of Mayor Bloomberg. You know, it was a much trumpeted thing. Everyone's standing behind him. That's how you know it's good, when success has a lot of followers. We're all ready. So he said, we looked at other cities and municipalities for when devastating things happen, to learn from them about how to really do this right. And of course, it didn't really work so well. So looking at that, what would you say we've learned from this moving forward?
Well, I think we learned from this what we learned from Katrina, that money gets wasted, bureaucrats take over. In our case, the private firms, the consultants, made money without any accountability. How do you pay consultants up front?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, everybody knows that you wait until the sale is made. And then if you look at the timeline of all this, nothing ever changes, nightmare after nightmare. So as we unraveled this in the audit, basically we found that there was no accountability. People, once they're paid up front, don't do the work. And the city was not running this. See, at the end of the day, you turned it over to unqualified consultants and you said, we've done our part. Lesson, whether it's a disaster, terrorist attack, anything that comes our way, the city has to beef up its emergency response capacity because at the end of the day, we have to manage, we have to supervise. When I went out and did this audit conversation, which had never been done before in the controller's office, we don't usually do audits, at the desk with financial documents. But I went out myself and listened to testimony. We didn't do town hall meetings.
But this is at a time too when you'd been in office all of 5 minutes and you were running all over the city doing different meetings. I
spent night after night, and we did a hearing in every impacted community because I had to know what was going on. I had heard all of this anecdotal, information while I was running, but to go to Staten Island, to be in Brooklyn and just have people come with their paperwork and their families and tell the story of still being evicted after they built up their communities. One of the great things about Brooklyn and the city that was impacted, nobody wanted to flee or leave. People fought like hell to stay.
I was asking Brian, wow, why did this woman in the video, why did she stay?
They stayed.
And she stayed because, she had a lot of elderly neighbors, and she was like, well, if they're going to stay, young person, I would probably stay too.
That was the story after 9/11.
Right.
Nobody wanted to leave. Everyone wanted to build the city. So we didn't involve the people in the community. We didn't take advantage of the capacity of the people in the neighborhoods. And then just turned it over. And so I think that there has to be accountability going forward. We're not done here yet. I don't think people should think this is the end of the story. Unfortunately, this is just the beginning. It's going to be a painstaking operation to get this right.
I have a question about, you've mentioned the consultants being unqualified. I mean, who's responsible for hiring them, one, and then what's been their reaction now that the audit has happened?
Well, part of what we said is that these consultants, some are still being used. At the very least, they must have registered contracts with our office because a contract is an agreement, right? And so we get more data and more opportunity to scrutinize the fees they're making, what they're charging, and then we're able to audit them easier. What we found in our audit was incomplete applications, not just with one consulting firm, but through multiple firms, and then they become interchangeable. I just find it incredible that you get paid for an application that you never completed. And that you lost paperwork, and that one social, not a social worker, but one advocate on your behalf would change every day. It's maddening. It was maddening. That's really hard. And it actually happened.
So you issued an 87-page audit, and there was a 27-page addendum from the Mayor's Office of Housing Recovery. So in all of that response, did they say anything about getting money back for New Yorkers from consultants who were paid, some would say, an exorbitant amount for something that they never delivered on?
Well, you can't get the money back if you sort of pay it up front. And I think the lesson learned has got to be before you enter into agreements, when they have to be signed and registered properly, and there also has to be accountability mechanisms. And my interest is not to go back with the housing recovery folks. We do audits of everybody. It's nothing personal. I wish we had better results. We actually commended Amy Peterson and her group for starting to streamline the process. A lot of success they've had. But I also think we have to finish the job here in terms of dotting our I and crossing our T. If you have consultants, you have to have contracts. It's not enough to say, well, if we withhold their pay, they'll do the work. No, just have a contract. Lay it all out for people. Make sure there's no lawsuits that come later. The city's already paying. I've been on the show to talk to you about millions of dollars in lawsuits. Don't create another generation of lawsuits on Build It Back. Let's just do it right.
So looking at this timeline here, this was something that your office issued that was part of the overall audit. Starting in October 2012, working our way to March of this year, where did we sort of go off track looking at this flow chart? When's the moment that it went left here?
I think it got off the rails pretty quickly in the beginning because the structure, the consultant structure or the consultant pyramid, if you will, was not workable because at the end of the day, the overall consultant never had experience with this. And so we didn't really find the best people that were out there. Also, I think the city just didn't have capacity to manage something like this. So it speaks to how we will manage crises like this in the future. I actually think, given our agencies that have real expertise, we must have more involvement from our city workers, from our agencies, the people who manage paperwork and emergency services on a daily basis. And there was never, I feel, sort of an army put together of people who we were already paying because they're city workers and who would love to do this work. The other thing, and you look at NYCHA, the whole issue of the New York Public Housing Authority, there were people at my hearings, at my informational hearings, that said, put us to work. We want to build back our community. We'll do it. And nobody called them. So you had people who did not have homes or lived in public housing, couldn't get back in, and they wanted to help, but no one called them. They were looking for consultants who were doing shoddy work because the consultants hired people that were underqualified, right? They didn't have the qualifications to do this work. Yeah. So they didn't care because how could they? They didn't know what to do. And so there was no one managing the consultants, the consultants weren't managing their people, and then it just tipped. And then suddenly it got to the point where we're still missing thousands of applications. People have dropped out. Yeah. 6,000 some odd people just said, we're done, I can't do this anymore, I got to get on with my life. Now, how do you let that happen? Right. And while, again, we are starting to construct housing and make people offers, it's slow. And people have suffered.
So now you've done the audit, you understand what happened. What are the next steps?
So part of my job is to follow up. And this is not a one-shot audit. I'm going to be part of the Build It Back program for as long as it's around, because I do think we have to be there. I have to tell you, one of the things that I've learned about auditing in my 15 months as controller, once you go in on an audit, it does wake up everybody. Yeah. The audits take a year. They're not gotcha audits, so you actually work with HRO and the agencies. They're never going to wake up in the morning and say, did you see what the controller did to us? They know the recommendations back and forth. We argue, we listen. Sometimes they're right about some of our conclusions. We change them. Sometimes we make recommendations. They agree with us. Sometimes they say you're wrong about these recommendations, and we take them back. So this audit process is not designed to hurt somebody. It's designed to get a better product or a better outcome.
Right. So we literally, in the last minute, I want to ask you, you have all these facts and figures. You spent all this time digging these things out and working with the agencies, but I wonder about the human side. You went to every borough, you met with these folks, and how has this impacted folks on a human level who may not be used to standing in line and submitting paperwork? These are by and large homeowners who in a sense got to see how the other half lives, and people who have to wait for NYCHA or other government substances or subsidies. Yeah. How do you think this has impacted the character of our city?
Well, I think the people, being a homeowner, right, also comes with its share of aggravation and frustration, just like being a renter in the city. I think that's equal. But I do think people were never given a fighting chance. So you can't say to somebody, well, you didn't do the paperwork or you didn't do your end of the bargain, because it was rigged from the beginning. People were not going to be successful. And I think there's a simmering anger at that. It's not like you go in, I just, a few weeks ago, I went in and I got my municipal ID. So I had to wait. But I got the ID. Yeah. They didn't mess up the paperwork. They sent me it,
The goal line was there.
You saw it. Now, not everything is going to run smoothly, right? But it does work. When you have trained, qualified people, it works, and that's how you move the bureaucracy. So I think the best thing I thought we did was come in first and listen to the community, because no one had listened. So before we did the audit, you listened to what was going on in Staten Island or Coney Island or in Lower Manhattan when the water just burnt out every boiler. So when we started to put the audit together, we knew where the problem was. And I hope that this is something that we're going to look at from time to time in our office. I think government has to be out in the community if you're going to critique and challenge authority. Sometimes you really have to listen to the people who experience what's going on. And that's why we work on our NYCHA audits with NYCHA residents, and we're continuing to do that with our MWBE work. We're working with small businesses. I think there's a connection between what our office does as the people's office, right? Holding agencies accountable, but you also got to listen to the people.
All right.
Thanks
Thank you so
much.
much.
We'll see you back in 56.
I can't wait.
That's right.
Happy birthday.
I'm a speed limit, folks.